Welcome to the Tesla Economist. Please hit the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. As far as career-wise, all I've ever been is an entrepreneur. I love business. It fascinates me. I love the fact that they can make the world a better place. Now, when I look at the legacy auto companies, as a business person who is familiar with the industry, I often wonder how they'll be able to successfully transition over to EVs. Let's go through how this might be possible, whilst identifying potential issues they may run into on the way. The writing is on the wall now. EVs are clearly the future, and the legacy auto companies are starting to realise this. They've begun launching various electric models, yet none have come close to Tesla's sales nor specifications. But they have to start somewhere, and they still have just under 10 years or so to get this right. They might genuinely be trying now, rather than just launching EVs to show their shareholders that this is nothing to be concerned about. Any type of car is their business, whether electric or ICE. It's about the car and the brand, not the motor or technology. These companies have seen plenty of other auto companies attempt to compete with them along the way, and they never lasted long or made any dent in their market share. Except this time, it's different. One of the challenges that I see is that they have to transform the entire product from mechanical to electric. Unfortunately, this is not done by just sticking a battery in under the hood. They can't just make any old electric car and stick their brand on it and expect people to buy it. Tesla have set a standard. The car needs to be built electric from the ground up. It needs batteries on the base for the lower centre of gravity, thus improving handling. Then there are new manufacturing advances that Tesla have discovered, such as structural pack design and gigacastings. But it's been hard enough for ICE manufacturers to adapt to just battery-powered cars. They aren't even close to these new production advances. Elon said that unless auto manufacturers go in this direction, they simply will not be able to compete, let alone a successful battery with decent range. Okay, so they're starting now, and some of them are reaching ranges that are actually practical. Well, one, the Mustang Mach-E, at 305 miles of range, almost up to where the Model S was 5 years ago with 315 miles of range. No other manufacturer has an EV in production with as high a range as that. Then comes the little problem of trying to also make these cars with a profit, whilst leaving a profit in for the car dealers who sell them at the same time. Oh, and saving some money for advertising too. It just doesn't fit in with their existing business model. They can't make money from servicing or engine parts from these vehicles. This means that they simply can't obtain the same profit margins as Tesla, just from these two issues alone. Of course, they're going to have enough problems getting their costs down as it is. Okay, rather than just humouring the incumbents, let's be realistic. They will never be able to compete with Tesla on price. It's not going to happen. By the same logic, they're also never going to be able to compete with Tesla on range. Their batteries are never going to be as efficient as Tesla's, and their cars will not be as lightweight. Tesla seem to have an innate ability to make extremely quick cars too, so they'll never compete on performance. Tesla will always be the quickest, best value car with the furthest range for the money. Oh, and somehow also the safest too. But there comes a point when enough range is enough, and charging stations are everywhere, so it's not as big a deal. Although a Tesla may have 600 miles of range, there might be a BMW that has 400 miles of range at the same price. 400 miles is still good enough. After a while, range is just bragging rights more than anything. We might see this in 3 to 5 years perhaps. So maybe the ICE companies think they just need to hang in there until the technology is right and slowly replace their existing models as electric, the classic example being the new F-150 Lightning. And perhaps they're even holding out for the likes of QuantumScape to release their solid-state battery, and then they can actually beat Tesla on range too. Okay, and some of them are talking about this transition too, and they've even been putting numbers on it, saying they will invest tens of billions of dollars to achieve this. If that's even possible, then during the transition, it would possibly mean that their companies suffer losses. That would mean no dividends. Shareholders of these companies don't want their income to stop. Tesla investors are fine to invest without receiving any dividend, particularly as the stock price is up around 100 times since its IPO. I can't see Ford's stock price going up 100 times from their transition. Not to mention, they don't even know if they're going to make it through to the other side. But then if they do start announcing these new all-electric cars replacing their existing models, then it might mean that customers stop buying their ICE cars in anticipation of waiting for the new electric replacement, which the manufacturers have announced is the future of automotive. Then why would the customers want to buy the past of automotive? This is known as the Osborne effect. Osborne was a computer manufacturer that put themselves out of business by announcing a newer, improved version to come out later on. So everyone waited for that version and stopped buying the existing. How do they get around that? Okay, but if they did launch an EV, then they're going to somehow have to market themselves different from Tesla. Ford went with the traditional style of pickup truck that everyone is used to, rather than something new, with out-of-the-box thinking that takes advantage of this new source of power. That's because they don't have the luxury of being able to make such jumps in design. They have to stick with their tradition, which they may think is positive, but it will hold them back in the long run. They need some way to separate themselves from Tesla, but Tesla has the mainstream electric vehicles. Tesla takes such time and precision on all their vehicles in every aspect, from design, functionality, cost, production, safety, and more. The others are rushing their cars, or just using the same designs from the past. How can they differentiate themselves in the market from Tesla? So far, all I can think of is an EV with ultimate luxury at Rolls-Royce level, or extreme styling at Lamborghini level. But they're too distracted with powering the car with a battery. They're missing the fact that Tesla has the whole car digital, along with all these other digital features. A center screen for entertainment, a computer on wheels. These other companies do not have experience making computers. I can't see them ever reaching this level. This is the actual technology behind Tesla, and is very understated. Of course, they don't have FSD either, but I don't feel like I need to go into that each time. The legacy companies have these existing factories designed to build ICE cars. The difference alone in efficiencies that Tesla had from building a purpose-built facility in Shanghai compared to after a decade of Fremont. With all that experience, knowing what would make a good EV factory, and then building 3 more after the initial Shanghai one. Whereas the legacy autos are going to be left with having to retrofit their existing ICE manufacturing plants. It would be far too costly and timely to write them off and build custom EV factories. And they wouldn't even know how to customize them the best way anyway. Of course, it's not just their factories they're left with, but all the employees too. Some of them have hundreds of thousands of staff. What happens to them? They don't need mechanical engineers anymore, or engine designers, or an R&D department for turbos. They need battery engineers, software engineers, AI engineers. Many of the existing employees' careers are now essentially obsolete. And this might not be a simple fire and hire process either. For one, the new staff they require are going to be in high demand, as all the other legacy companies will want to hire them too. But not only that, there are unions they have to deal with. We could see strikes from current employees worried about losing their entire career. I don't think the employees will take the transition as easy as they hope. And not just employees, but their resellers, the car dealers, who also have an existing business revolved around serving and repairing engines. They may refuse to purchase electric vehicles, as they know it will kill a large part of their business, and, as a result, would expect to be paid a higher margin on every car they sell, new if it's electric. That's right, car dealers make less income from electric cars than ICE cars, yet their overheads are the same. Therefore, the manufacturers would have to compensate by offering a further discount on electric vehicle sales to increase their margin. Except the problem is that Tesla has set the price point for a sedan and SUV, and they already can't compete at that lower price. So where is this extra margin going to come from? And what about battery supply? Sure, legacy auto companies can use external battery manufacturers like SK America, Northvolt, CATL, LG, etc. At least for now. And whilst their numbers are low, around 1 million or so cars a year sold collectively. But what's going to happen when it's reaching upwards of 20 million cars a year, and they're all trying to compete with one another to scramble to purchase enough batteries? Well, supply and demand will dictate. The prices increase further if that's the case. As if the legacy companies weren't already producing at a high enough cost already. Well, clearly, they'll have to have their own battery supply and manufacturing facilities, and maybe even mines. But they would somehow have to compete with Tesla's 4680 batteries to have a chance. Now, Tesla have a lot of experience with batteries, particularly working alongside Panasonic in the Nevada Gigafactory. Panasonic are possibly the best battery manufacturers in the world. Tesla are competent enough to make their own batteries as a result. Tesla are the largest battery consumer in the world by several orders of magnitude. Tesla has a larger valuation and thus more money than anyone else in the world who needs batteries for autos. Therefore, battery technology is most valuable to Tesla, and they have the most money to invest into it. Elon Musk has been saying just how difficult the 4680 battery lines are to produce, and how hard work it really is. Actually painfully hard by the sounds of it. How could a legacy auto company come close to Tesla's level of battery technology then? How could they find the funds, the talent, and put the required effort and dedication into it, let alone with the lack of experience? Even if they achieved it 5 years later, Tesla have probably moved on to solid-state batteries by that stage anyway. Batteries are the major cost of an EV. I bet every car that ICE companies produce have to spend over $10,000 more on each car's battery, especially when Tesla have their 4680s. That's huge. And when you add another 15% cost to dealers and advertising, or around $5,000, then that's $15,000 already, let alone everything else. And yes, they don't have a charging network, but I don't see this as being a major hurdle. I think chargers will naturally pop up over time. The problem is there aren't many places to charge until then. By that stage, it may just be too late. But any of them can buy a gigapress from Hydra. What alloy are they going to use for the casting? Tesla had to create their own version of an aluminium alloy in order to get it right, so it didn't lose shape and could be casted at such a pace. These companies are already eyeballs deep in debt. How can they find extra funds for such a massive expansion? They say if any industry goes on long enough, eventually all the profits are removed. Well, that's what's happened. So what happens when we have disruption like this coming in with a competitor getting 30% margins? These companies can't move. They have too much debt obligation already. Not to mention their inevitable ICE car sales dwindling over time. Sure, they're making great profits now in a bull market. What's going to happen when the tide comes out and interest rates rise too? I wouldn't want to be the accountant who has to solve that problem. And who would want to lend them money when the only EVs they can show the market are selling so poorly and making no money? In all honesty, I can't see how any of them can make it. I simply think it's too hard for them to transition. A company like Panasonic or LG has more chance. I think this is more about batteries than experience building cars. That's a bigger competitive advantage in becoming an EV company, at least in my opinion. This would be more like Yellow Pages, trying to have made a better search engine than Google. The only reason they're trying to is because they don't want to be the next BlackBerry. Either that, or they're just doing what they can to prop up the stock price in the meantime. The presenters at Volkswagen's Power Day did not look convincing. It didn't look like they believed in what they were saying, or could achieve. What we do have, however, is China and maybe Korea. There might be real competition there within time, likely something like Apple and Android. China could make some very low-cost EVs using LFP batteries, but with much lower margins, just like Apple has much higher margins with all their phones. I think it's too difficult for legacy companies, no matter how much money they throw at it. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe.